Leela Carter sat in a quiet hospital garden, her wheelchair parked under a large tree. The sun was warm but not too bright, and she held a small sketchbook on her lap. She spent many hours there every day, looking up at the sky and drawing what she saw. Some days it was bright blue with soft white clouds, and other days it was gray and heavy like a blanket pressing down. For Lila, the sky changed with her feelings. It was her way of dreaming when her body could not dance anymore. Before the accident, Lila had been a dancer. Life had been full of music and movement. When she danced, she felt free, as if her feet could carry her anywhere. One evening, after a late practice, a car ran a red light. The world turned upside down, and everything she knew ended on that quiet street. When she woke in the hospital, her legs no longer worked. The doctors spoke gently, but their eyes told her what words could not fix. At first, she did not want to see anyone. The curtains stayed closed, the drawings stopped, and she let her days slide by in silence. But as time passed, she began to spend time in the garden. The nurses encouraged her. It became her safe place, with green trees, the sound of birds, and a piece of open sky above. She started sketching again, trying to catch the shapes of clouds instead of the lines of dance. One summer afternoon, the hospital garden was busier than usual. Staff were preparing for the visit of someone important. Nurses polished the benches, the gardener cleaned the paths, and there was a quiet rush of excitement. Leela, who had been drawing by the fountain, did not pay much attention. Important people came and went. They usually gave speeches, shook hands, and disappeared again. She preferred her quiet corner under the tree. The man who arrived that day was tall, dressed in a dark suit, and looked like he belonged in a world far away from the hospital. His name was Ethan Hale, the CEO of a large company that had donated money to build a new children's wing. His life was made of meetings, deadlines, and decisions. He was polite to everyone but often distant, his mind too full of numbers and plans to leave room for much else. When the hospital director took him around the garden, he stopped for a moment near the fountain. His phone buzzed, and while the others kept talking, he stepped aside to take the call. After finishing, he looked around and noticed Lila sitting by the tree with her sketchbook. For some reason he could not explain, he walked over. She was so focused on her drawing that she did not notice him until he spoke. "That looks beautiful," he said quietly. Lila looked up, surprised. She had not expected anyone to speak to her. "Thank you," she said. "I'm trying to draw the clouds, but they keep changing." Ethan glanced upward. "That's what clouds do, I suppose." She smiled faintly. "Yes, that's why I like them. They can change and still stay part of the same sky." Something in her words made him pause. There was a calm strength in her voice, a kind of acceptance he rarely heard in his own world. For a moment, they both looked up at the same patch of sky. After a quiet minute, Lila spoke again. "Sir, can you lift me to see the sky?" she asked. Her tone was gentle, not demanding, but full of quiet hope. Ethan blinked, unsure what she meant. "Lift you. But just a little," she explained. "The wall blocks the view of the horizon from here. I want to see how far it goes." He hesitated. He was not used to touching strangers, and certainly not to lifting someone in a wheelchair. Yet something inside him said yes before he could reason it away. He moved closer, placed his hands carefully under the sides of her chair, and tilted it just enough so she could see over the wall. Lila gasped softly. The sun was setting, and the whole sky was painted with gold and pink. It looked endless. Her eyes filled with tears, but they were not sad tears. They were full of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan looked too, and for a moment, the two of them shared the same stillness. No phones rang, no deals waited. There was only the sky and the sound of a woman seeing it in a new way. When he set her chair down again, she said, "You know, most people forget to look up. They only look forward." He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Maybe I've been one of those people." Lila nodded. "Then maybe you should look up more often." That was the moment something quiet but important began. Neither of them knew it yet, but a small, invisible thread formed between them. It was not just kindness or curiosity, it was something deeper, something that would change both of their lives. The girl who could not walk and the man who never stopped running had both looked up, and for the first time shared the same sky. He did not know why it mattered, but it did. 2 days later, he went back. He told himself it was only to check on the progress of the hospital project. That was what he said to his assistant, to the driver, and most of all to himself. Still, when he walked through the hospital gates, his eyes looked for the tall tree near the fountain where she had sat. He sat on the bench beside her. For a few moments, neither spoke. It was strange for him to sit quietly. Usually silence made him restless, but with Lila it felt easy. Sometimes he came after finishing business calls. There are times he brought her coffee or stories from the city. She told him about the other patients she had met, about a nurse who sang old songs while giving medicine, and about how the garden changed color with each day. Lila had a way of looking at simple things as if they were miracles. A falling leaf, a bird landing on the wall, the reflection of the sky in the pond. "Do you like what you do?" she asked one day. He answered as he always did, "Of course it's a good company, a big responsibility." "That's not what I asked," she said, watching him carefully. "Do you like it?" She spoke to him as if he were simply a person sitting beside her under the same sky. The hospital staff started to notice. Some whispered that the CEO visiting so often must be interested in the young woman in the wheelchair. Others smiled quietly when they saw them talking, as if they knew something good was growing there. One evening, as the sun went down, Leela looked at him and said, "I think we all have threads that connect us to others. You can't see them, but they exist. When someone touches your life, even for a short moment, the thread begins." "What kind of thread?" he asked. "A soul string," she said. "Keeps people connected by kindness or memory or something deeper that we can name." He looked at her for a long moment. "Do you think we have one of those?" She smiled. "Maybe we do. Maybe that's why you came back." That thought stayed with him long after he left the garden. When he returned to his tall glass office that night, he looked out across the city lights. They twinkled like stars trapped on Earth. For years he had looked down on the city and felt power. For the first time he looked up, toward the real stars, and wondered if one of them belonged to her. The next morning he placed a watercolor set on his desk. He bought it on the way to work, did not know how to paint, and he felt shy even thinking about it, but he told himself he would learn. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Ethan and Lila grew stronger. The garden that once belonged only to her sketches now held shared laughter, quiet talks, and small moments that felt larger than time. Leela was becoming stronger after therapy and had learned how to move with more ease. Ethan noticed how her face brightened each time she managed a new challenge. He admired her courage, but there was something he kept hidden from her. His company was facing a major decision. Merger with another corporation would bring him great profit and secure his position, yet the merger also meant cutting some parts of the hospital's funding. The hospital management depended heavily on his support. The new partners saw it as an unnecessary expense. Ethan felt torn between his duty as a businessman and the promise he had made to the hospital's children's wing. One morning, Leela waited in the garden with a drawing in her lap. It showed two clouds touching at the edges, forming a gentle shape in the middle that looked like two hands meeting. She planned to show it to Ethan. She had been thinking about the meaning of connection and how people could lift each other without even noticing it. But that morning, Ethan did not come. He arrived later that afternoon, looking thoughtful and tired. His usual calm smile was missing. Lila noticed at once. She asked if something was wrong. He said everything was fine, yet his eyes betrayed him. He sat beside her quietly but seemed far away. When she showed him the drawing, he nodded politely and praised her work, though his mind was clearly elsewhere. After he left, Lila overheard two nurses talking near the corridor. They mentioned that the hospital might lose part of its funds if the new business deal went through. The nurses were worried about how it could affect the patients. Lila felt a chill run through her. She did not want to believe Ethan would allow that. She wanted to think he cared enough to protect the place that had given both of them so much hope. For the next few days, he did not visit. Lila tried to focus on her drawings, but her heart grew heavier. She sat by the window instead of the garden, watching clouds drift by. She wondered if every soul string could break when stretched too far. Inside his office, Ethan sat behind a desk full of papers. His assistant placed another document in front of him for his signature. The city lights outside gleamed like restless stars. He had spent sleepless nights thinking about what to do. The merger would make him richer and safer in the world of powerful men. Ending it would make him seem reckless. But each time he imagined signing the papers, he saw Lila's face in the garden, her eyes wide with wonder as she looked up at the sky. At the board meeting, one partner said the hospital donations made the company look weak. Charity is not business, the man said firmly. Ethan's hands tightened around his pen. He wanted to speak, but years of corporate training made him quiet. Then another partner said the hospital's children's wing could be delayed if the new plan was approved. Ethan felt something break inside his chest. After a long pause, he said, "Some things are worth more than business." His voice was calm, but his decision was clear. He stood up, gathered his papers, and walked out of the room. That evening, rain started to fall. Lila sat by the window as raindrops tapped the glass. Her sketchbook lay open but untouched. The door to her room clicked open, and she turned in surprise. Ethan stood there, holding an umbrella, his suit damp from the rain. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he stepped closer. "I ended it," he said simply. She did not understand at first. Ended what? The deal? The merger? Is the thing that would have closed part of this place? Lila's eyes widened. "You did that for the hospital?" He nodded. "For the hospital, and maybe also for myself. I forgot what really mattered." Her voice softened. "You could lose your position for that." "I know," he said. "But I could not look at you again if I didn't." The room was silent except for the rain. She looked at him, unsure whether to be angry or grateful. Part of her still hurt that he had not told her sooner. Yet there was something honest in his eyes now, something raw and real. She took a deep breath. She said, "The sky looks different when it rains," she said at last. He turned toward the window. Gray clouds covered the horizon, but in the distance, a faint light broke through. "It does," he agreed. "But it always clears." Lila motioned for him to come closer. He walked over and stood by her side. Their reflections mixed in the window. The rain began to slow, and the faint light grew stronger. For a while, they just stood there, saying nothing more. Sometimes silence said more than words. Ethan felt a calm he had never known before. For the first time in years, he was not chasing success or fighting deadlines. He was standing still, next to someone who saw the world as it was meant to be seen. Outside, the last drops of rain faded away, and the sky began to open again, wide and endless. waiting for both of them to rediscover its color. The next morning, the sun returned after the long rain. The hospital garden looked fresh and alive. Water drops shone on every leaf like tiny pieces of glass. Lila wheeled herself outside and stopped under the same tree where she used to draw. She could still smell the wet earth. The scene felt new, as if the world had been washed clean overnight. Ethan arrived soon after, this time without a suit. He wore a plain shirt and looked more at ease than she had ever seen him. He greeted her with a quiet smile. "I was not sure you would want to see me." Lila looked at him and said softly, "You kept your promise to the hospital. That means something." Ethan sat down on the bench beside her. "It almost cost me everything, but I do not regret it." He told her how the board reacted, how some investors left, and how his assistant looked at him in disbelief when he announced his resignation from the top position. He felt lighter now, like a man who had finally stepped out from under a shadow. Lila listened carefully. Her eyes did not show pity, only respect. "Maybe you were never meant to chase numbers," she said. "Maybe you were meant to build something with meaning." Ethan nodded slowly. "I do not know yet what that will be, but I want to start again. I want to use what I have learned to help." They stayed in silence for a while, watching the sky reflect in the pond. Lila reached for her sketchbook and opened a fresh page. "Do you know what I want to draw today?" she asked. "What?" he said. "Courage," she answered. "Not muscles or movement, but the kind that lives inside a person when they choose what is right." He smiled. "Then you should draw yourself." Her eyes widened a little at his words. "Me? I am not brave." "Yes, you are," he said quietly. "You faced something most people could not bear and still learned how to smile again." She looked down at her hands and did not answer. But the compliment stayed with her and gave her a warm feeling she could not hide. They spent the next hours talking about small things. Ethan told her he wanted to create a foundation that supported artists who faced physical challenges. Lila liked that idea very much. "If you do that, you must let them name it," she said. "That way it will belong to them, not to you." Later that week, Lila had a physical therapy session. The doctor encouraged her to stand for the first time without full support. She'd been practicing for months, but this time was different. She felt ready. Ethan came to the hospital early to see her try. When he entered the room, she looked nervous but determined. "Are you sure you want to see this?" she asked. "I would not miss it," he said. The doctor gave her gentle instructions. Lila placed her hands on the bars at her sides, pushed with her arms, and slowly lifted herself from the chair. Her legs trembled under her, but she did not stop. For a moment, she stood on her own. Her face glowed with effort and pride. Ethan stood close by, ready to help if needed. She held the position for several seconds, then sat back down, breathing hard but smiling. There were tears in her eyes, yet they were not from pain. "You did it," Ethan said. For a little while, she answered between breaths. "That is how every dance begins," he said, and she laughed at his words. Over the next days, she practiced again and again. The nurses cheered her every time she made progress. Ethan often joined them, and sometimes brought small gifts like flowers or new pencils for her sketches. Each visit added another layer to their bond, quiet and strong, like the roots under the tree where they first met. One afternoon, as the sun was setting, they went to the roof terrace of the hospital. It was newly built, meant for patients to enjoy fresh air. From there, the city looked small, and the sky stretched wide. Lila turned to him. "You were right about the sky," she said. "It does clear after rain." He looked at her, seeing the light touch her hair. "You were right too," he replied. "It is always worth looking up." She took out her newest drawing. It showed a woman standing under an open sky with faint lines rising from her heart to the clouds above. "This is what I call a soul string," she said. "It is what connects to people when they help each other believe again." Ethan looked at the drawing and felt something tighten in his chest, not from sadness, but from the kind of joy that is too deep for words. "That is beautiful," he said. Lila smiled and turned her face toward the sky. "Maybe one day I will walk outside of this hospital and see this view again without wheels," she said. "You will," Ethan replied firmly. "And when that day comes, I will be right beside you." The evening breeze passed between them, carrying the scent of rain and flowers. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting everything in gold. Lila felt her heart steady and free. She no longer feared the future. Somewhere in that quiet moment, she realized that even if her body moved slowly, her spirit had already learned to fly. Ethan saw the same truth reflected in her eyes. For both of them, the sky no longer felt far away. It lived inside them, wider than ever before, waiting for tomorrow. Ethan arrived quietly and stood by the doorway, watching her move her chair from one painting to the next. He wore no tie, no business suit, and looked more relaxed than he ever had in his old life. When she saw him, she smiled at once. "You came early," she said. "I wanted to see the sky before anyone else did," he answered.